Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the SmartBiz Advisors Podcast. My name is John Jones, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and longtime associate, Mr. Mark Fackrell. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, John. Nice to speak with you as always. I'm joining you from the garage here.
You're at the beach, about to close on a new home purchase, so seems like a wonderful place to be.
I am indeed. I'm just in an Airbnb here, waiting for that to get done, and then we will maybe do these from the beach front.
Yeah. Next week we'll do one from the beach, and that will be fun, quite fun. So today we're going to focus on a topic that is probably pretty interesting to the people watching, small business people in general, and that is navigating economic uncertainty for small businesses. So, obviously, economic uncertainty is an ever-present challenge for small businesses. It impacts every element of how you operate. It's going to change your plans. It could cause tumult and turbulence, and small business owners need to know how to navigate that kind of unpredictable environment. So that could involve, fluctuating demand, changing rules, all kinds of different challenges. So I thought today we would kind of discuss some strategies and maybe some, share some advice, tips, maybe our own personal experiences, things that will help young small business entrepreneurs tackle these kind of challenges. So what do you think, Mark? We've been working together for nearly 10 years. We've been through a lot, right? We've been through so many different ups and downs. Let's start by discussing, what do we mean by economic uncertainty? What does that mean in your mind?
I mean, it's one of those things. It's kind of, it's difficult, I guess, to describe it, but you sure know it when you see it. We've been fairly lucky over the last, 10 years. We obviously had a huge road bump when COVID came along, and that just kind of threw the whole world into turmoil.
Yeah.
But, we have, I mean, you and I have both lived through several of these. I mean, the dot-com bubble that burst back in the late 90s. We had, the housing crisis that happened in 2008. Obviously, we had all the bullshit that happened with COVID. So, the reality is part of doing business is dealing with time with, the world when times aren't so great. And, you got to keep your business alive through those situations in order to get to the good times. So, economic uncertainty, it's recessions, it's, problems with the housing market. It's basically when people aren't spending money. I mean, the reality is that, a lot of folks have businesses that are, maybe not necessarily luxury items, but they have businesses that provide services or goods that, aren't the absolute necessities, food and housing and clothing. And so, when times are uncertain and people, are reducing their spending and things of that nature, those other sorts of things have a tendency to get cut, right? So you've got to figure out how to, weather those storms.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is non-discretionary or discretionary versus non-discretionary. So yeah, I've typically been involved in definitely discretionary kind of businesses, ones where, yeah, our customers don't necessarily need what we have. They want it, they like it, but it's not something that is critical to their survival, their daily lives necessarily. So that's always a bit tougher. Obviously, grocery stores, maybe vehicles, daily things, gas and so forth, utilities. These are never going to suffer. But right. I guess that the people, that are affected by financial and economic uncertainty are more the rule rather than the exception. So this, small business, almost by definition, they're offering a service, they're offering a good, something that they might create in their own house, or something that they're specifically good at. And, when things happen, like you mentioned, COVID, or when we had the dot-com bubble or the housing crisis, these, there seems to be one of these every 3, 5 to 7 years. We're getting up there in our age, and so as you said, we've been through several of these now. So let's
Right.
get kind of down into the brass tacks. Like, let's just take 2024, perfect example, right? We're on the eve of a very important presidential election. We don't need to go into politics at all, but it's obviously going to influence people's behavior, their sentiment. What else is there? We've got wars, we've got immigration crisis, we've got AI. It's really changing the game, right? So, what do you think is, what do you think is important right now for a small business person? What should they be thinking with all these headwinds, these challenges? What should be their attitude, their focus? And what is your opinion on this, Mark? What do you think?
So the reality of this is that, there's all of these uncertainties that you just described. And like you said, they come along every so often, right? So the biggest thing from a small business owner's perspective is we don't know when the next thing is going to come along. So we've got to be prepared to deal with it whenever it does.
Yeah.
That's really kind of the basic thing is when time, the view that I have on business is, when times are good, you got to rake in as much cash as you can. You've got to be able to, build reserves so that you can weather the challenging times and then get on to the next spot where you're, raking in the cash again. And, the biggest part of it is you've got to be able to create that security for your business, right? And then whatever is extra, that's where you get to really benefit from it. But you've got to insulate yourself. It's kind of like providing an insurance policy for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I know that I'm going to need to be able to weather, 6 months of bad cash flow, then that's kind of my minimum. And then anything beyond that, you can reinvest it back into the business. You can pay it back to yourself or whatever. But you've really got to be in a situation. You've got to put yourself in a situation that you're able to weather the next storm that comes through.
Yeah. Okay. So you're kind of pointing out some strategies that small businesses can adopt to mitigate the risks associated with economic uncertainty. So let's break them down. What kind of things, from your point of view and in your opinion, your experience, what kind of things can they do to get ready or to withstand some kind of trouble in their business?
There's a lot of things that you can do. I would say I would break it down into probably 3 categories that I think it's worth focusing on. One is diversifying your revenue stream. So if you do that and one of your revenue streams takes a hit, then your other ones can kind of help make up for the slack. If you've got all of your eggs in one basket and that particular, revenue stream gets hit, then you're kind of stuck without, a significant reduction in revenue or no revenue for a significant period of time. So if you can build out different product lines and different services to be able to, create a revenue stream that comes in from, different things, then that will allow you to kind of weather those storms a little bit better than if you've got everything placed on one.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Okay. And what else?
The next big thing I would say, and I mentioned it earlier, is building cash reserves. So you should probably, create a rainy day fund, for lack of a better term, that says, if I'm not going to if my revenues drop by 50% for 6 months, am I going to have the cash reserves to be able to pay my operating expenses? Yeah. So that's very, very important. And that all comes from managing your cash it aside. It's almost like paying your taxes. You just take that money and you set it aside. And then if a situation comes up, there's a significant challenge in the economy or in the business, then you're in a situation to be able to deal with it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the final thing I would say is managing debt. So the last thing that you want to, one of these situations comes along and you're sitting on a pile of debt and you've got monthly payments that you've got to, make payments on, and you don't have any ability to go and, access any credit, then you're kind of screwed. So when times are good, you want to pay down all your credit lines. You want to pay down all your credit cards. I mean, I understand that we have to use these things sometimes to manage differences in cash flow and things of that nature. But you don't ever want to get into a situation where that's something that you're living on, because when the next, challenging economic time comes, then you're still stuck there paying all of those, expenses and those debt payments that you have to pay. So you don't want to be there, and the other thing is you do want to be in a situation where, we talk about debt a little bit, and it's a matter of, it's there to get you through short periods of time. So I would say that there are instances where you get through an economic downturn, you do have to rely on a line of credit. You do have to maybe finance things with credit cards for a short period of time. And that can be a tool that you can use to help get you on the other side of it. But you've got to be in a position so that when one of these nasty things comes along, you've got the ability to do that. So you want to keep those balances low and all of that stuff when times are good, so that you've got the ability to utilize them when you need them.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of what we're talking about, we mentioned in the past in our other discussions. Diversifying revenue streams is something that you should be doing from the very beginning, right? Relentless about finding a new customer, finding a new kind of tact. Oh, I can teach, I can consult, I can do some other kind of derivation or derivative and create an alternate revenue source. So yeah, entrepreneurs, small business people need to be flexible, dynamic, and creative. So diversifying revenue streams, building the cash reserves, I suspect is easier said than done. But at the same time, you do need to be intelligent about how you're spending, conservative and mindful that, you could get sick, or the market could have some turmoil and you could find yourself in a completely different scenario. So having a little bit of extra cash is definitely important. And, managing debt, we talked about this in several of our previous episodes. That is just keeping track, right? Keeping track, budgeting, planning, being aware of when things are going to come, like be billed or come due. This is all about having a good plan. So this is something I think we've been really repeating and emphasizing this whole time, is planning, budgeting, being organized, and dynamic, creative. Yeah, all of those things are important things for small business people. Now, so with that said, those are very general. What else is there? What can folks do in their businesses? In their daily operation, or what other kind of practices maybe could they or customs or habits could they generate or build on that would help them deal with financial uncertainty?
So operational efficiency and agility of the business are two of the big things. The more efficient you are and the more agile you are, you're going to be able to adapt to these changes better, right? If you're a very static company and you can't move with the market and you can't move with customers, those sorts of issues can really catch you off guard.
Yeah.
So you want to build a robust business, right? You want to be able to manage your costs effectively. You want to have multiple suppliers if you're selling a product, right?
That's right. Yeah.
This is a big issue that we saw during COVID is I had several clients that were relying on sources from China to supply products, and everything shut down.
Yeah.
So that meant their ability to ship products also shut down, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's wise to have some backup plans. I mean, if you're I wouldn't rely on one. I certainly wouldn't rely on one supplier, and I would also not rely on a supplier from any given country, right? If you're buying stuff from China and that's the bulk of your product, that's fine. But you should probably have, an American backup supplier that you can use if necessary.
Yeah, I suspect. Yeah, something. Remember
so that's a kind of a supply chain.
Yeah, even the post office was affected at that time, so it's a real challenge, But that was potentially one in a century, one in a decade, or more. So that was really a curveball or right out of left field. So, yep. And
it was right out of left field, and you can't predict everything, obviously, but I mean, we're talking about economic uncertainty, and we're talking about it probably primarily in relation to the United States. But if you've got a supplier in another country, then you're throwing the economic uncertainty of that country into the equation as well. So there could be something completely unrelated that happened in India, for example, and if that's where your major suppliers are, and you don't have any backups, then you can be in a bad situation.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. It's so, the global market's so dynamic. But then everything is affected, has a kind of a knock on or a domino effect. So we can never operate in a vacuum or independent of others. So we have to be ready. So that kind of brings up, flexibility, being able to adjust potentially at a moment or quickly. Like, I think it's worth mentioning right now, right? So we have AI that has really come into focus in the last year or so. And it's really the drumbeat of information is absolutely overwhelming. I'm sure you feel that way. And I know the people that might be watching us speak now are don't know what to think, what's important, where should they focus. And I think we might comment real quick on some kind of strategies that small business people can use or have to quickly pivot when they encounter financial uncertainty. What do you think? What do you think some of those are?
Some of the things that kind of come to mind there are, like scenario planning, and people can get crazy with this particular one. Thinking about all the 10 million different things that could go wrong.
Right to prepping. Right to prepping.
Right. So I would caution people not to get too carried away with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I would also say that if you do it within reason, it's probably not a bad idea. If my supply chain in China fell off, what am I going to do? I mean, there's an example of a scenario planning. I mean, you don't want to spend weeks worrying about that kind of shit. But what you do, I mean, sit down every once in a while and say, okay, what's a reasonable thing that I might encounter? And if that thing came up, then how am I going to deal with it? And, kind of play through what the process would be of how would you deal with it. So that's one instance, I think, that, it's probably worth being, aware of what's going on in the world. Right. Yep. So you don't want to just, live in a vacuum and pretend like you're the only thing that's going on out there. You should be aware of, geopolitics and overall economic circumstances, because these things all are going to impact our businesses. Right.
Yeah.
So if you have some general knowledge of what's going on in the world, I feel like it's going to give you an opportunity to be maybe not as caught off guard if something goes wrong.
Yeah. Staying aware, staying informed, probably continuing education, continuing to develop your skills, right?
Yeah.
Continuing to grow and evolve. is probably really key. People shouldn't stay set in their ways. They shouldn't evolve in sort of a linear track. They should be, as we mentioned, dynamic and ready to take a hold of an opportunity. It's just like if you had an opportunity that was incredible, you would jump right at it, right? If it's opportunity to make money, you would quickly move. So, it's the same thing. If we have another scare, a pandemic, or if we have unrest, or if we have, runaway inflation or something, you need to know about this, have thought about this, and maybe, potentially have some kind of plan for it. I know that's easier said than done. But Mark, I think that it's well worth sharing with the folks listening to us, that we've been through a lot, and each time we encountered some economic downturn, we thought, oh my gosh, it's over, or, oh, what's going to happen? But we're still here. The people are still buying the products, right? They're still on Amazon, getting their daily necessities, getting all sorts of things. So maybe at this stage, the only thing that's really changed is the decision-making or something, the decision-making process of how people spend money. They're still going to be there. So people should be optimistic and open-minded, but also, should feel some kind of assurance that, if their product is useful, it fulfills a role, or it has some kind of purpose, they should be confident that it will withstand just about anything, and they should continue to move forward on it despite some, serious, headwinds. What do you think?
I think that's a really great point that you make there. I mean, dealing with these sort of things that we're talking about, I mean, a lot of it is mindset, right? It's, the world is not going to come to an end. We are going to make it through. And like you said, we're both perfect examples of that. We've been through at least 3 major ones ourselves, and we're still sitting here talking. So
and we're still excited about the future. We still got great opportunities. It's still okay. So I think that's one thing. I think I mentioned this to you in the past. One thing, if I were to go back to my younger self, it doesn't matter what age, what would I tell him? And I think it's plan for the future, plan for the long term. And I think that is a key sort of moral, or something that we can pass on to people checking us out is, plan for the long term. It's definitely much better.
Yeah, I mean, that's great advice. And I guess the other thing that I would say, just to add on to that, is don't ever get too wrapped up in the situation that you're in right now, because it's going to change, both bad and good, right? So don't go crazy if things are going good, because there's going to be a bad time. But you know what? The reality is that when there's a bad time, it's going to get better too. So don't just be steady. It's like the tortoise and the hare, right?
Yeah. The tortoise is definitely the way to go.
Yep.
So, okay, before we wrap it up, are there any things that we can, share with our listeners, some resources that they might avail themselves of, or they might think about when they are in confronting economic uncertainty? Do we have any advice?
One of the biggest ones, I think, and this is, kind of a recurring theme that we talk about as well, is having a network of folks that are, in business and more specifically, even in your business, right? So people that you can talk to and maybe say, hey, what are you doing in this situation that's working and helping you out? Sometimes it's nice to have somebody that's, in the trenches with it. You just call up and, you guys can commiserate for a few minutes, right?
Nice.
It's, it's just, having a support network is extremely helpful, both a professional one and a personal one. That's one of those things that you can't replace the value of those sorts of things. So that's going to help a lot. I would say having professional people that, know how to deal with this stuff, and experienced folks that have dealt with it before, that you can go to and ask for advice. And, a lot of these folks are people that you're probably going to have to pay, and that's all right, because if they help you, survive these challenges, then it's money well spent. But there's definitely, professional advisors of, financial people and legal people, marketing people, whatever it is that this situation is causing you to struggle. Find some people that are good and have been through that sort of situation before and can help you get through it.
Yeah, no doubt. I think joining your industry associations, getting involved in new and different business networks can definitely be very beneficial. We've mentioned that before. Regardless of whether you're encountering financial uncertainty or economic uncertainty, you should be networking. You should be meeting new people. You should be growing. You should be dynamic. You should be gaining knowledge and becoming familiar. And that will probably, practically more than anything else, being aware, being informed, that's probably what can take away the anxiety the best, the fastest. Right? All right.
That's a great point.
Yep. So with all that said, do we have any final final kind of word of advice that you want to pass on to our small business entrepreneurs that might be kind of worried about what the rest of this year, what does 2025 hold for them?
Again, the biggest part of this is just your own headspace. I mean, you got to be in a situation that you can weather pretty much everything. Resiliency is key, right? I mean, it's going to be, whatever the situation is, it's going to change. The other thing that's going to be important, again, this ties back to something we've talked about in the past, know where you're at financially. Have a good understanding of where you are. I mean, you can't, if you don't know where you're at there, then you're in a world of hurt. Those are probably the biggest things that I would suggest people pay attention to in these sorts of situations.
Great. Good advice. Yep. So wrapping up, you've heard us, economic uncertainty, obviously it's a pretty significant thing. We don't want to downplay it, but we know that it's in pretty much inevitable. It's recurring. So we have to be ready for it. And as we've mentioned today, the right strategies, maintaining financial resilience, operational efficiency, being flexible, being informed. These things are definitely going to help you, weather the storm, whether when economic trends are not maybe in your favor, these kind of things will help you weather that storm and achieve your longer term success. So thanks guys for tuning in to SmartBiz Advisors. We are the podcast focusing on everything small business and entrepreneurship, trying to help you guys do your very best and be successful in your endeavors. We appreciate your support. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, follow us on social, give us your thoughts in the comments. We appreciate it and look forward to bringing you more valuable content in our next episode. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, John.
Cheers.